Hello, my name is Peter Cinnamon, and you're very welcome to this. It's a podcast, and it's all about the Irish League, where we have our very first managerial casualty of the season. They only played one game in the league, but Larne and Nathan Rooney, they're heading to Splitsville. What does this mean for the project in Larne? What happens next? And we look back at Nathan Rooney's time, albeit it was quite brief, in charge of Inver Park. Who's going to be the next person to jump into that hot seat? Elsewhere, we'll look back at all the games that happened over the weekend and look ahead to Linfield's European adventure as they take on familiar foes Shelburne. Can they get through to the group phase? Let's find out. We're going to wrap it up in a tight little bow known as your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. It might only be a 4-game week to chat through, but my goodness, is there enough juicy news morsels for us to sink our teeth into. And this week, I'm doing it in the company of Portadown media man, Keelan Leeper.
How you doing, Peter? Nice to be here.
I'm doing good. I got lots of messages before I started recording because everybody was saying, oh my goodness, please don't tell me you've started recording yet. And I had to jump online going, what has happened? And the answer is that Larne is looking for a brand new manager. And I was thinking, is this the rise and fall and then fall again of Nathan Rooney at Larne? But realistically, 10 games, 1 league game this season. Was there ever really a rise for him?
Yeah, it's a real bizarre one because you have that whole situation with last season where technically he's only fully appointed as the manager there this summer. There was almost like a re-announcement.
And you capture it in one word perfectly. Bizarre. Everyone is not shell-shocked. They're flummoxed by this. Teams don't sack, part ways, depart, whatever the terminology is being used for this splitting of the marriage. You don't do it after 1 game. But here we are, where Larne have already done pretty much most of their business. They've had a wee jolly in Europe, and now they're looking for a new manager.
It's really strange because if you look on Lauren's social media, as I did, I had a wee crawl back through, and it's only yesterday, I think, or maybe the day before, where it's a quote from Nathan Rooney, and the caption is, locked in, ready to get started on the league campaign. And it's like, how could things have moved so quickly from then? I think in terms of Larne, the one thing they didn't need this season, the one thing that everyone talked about last season, was the unsettled start and how much that impacted them throughout the rest of the season. And yet they've just landed themselves in the exact same position this year.
They're a team who used to be held up as a side of stability, who of course had all the investment, but they looked as though they picked and chose their players very meticulously. They had the Lynch Incorporated duo in who brought them up from the championship, and there was absolutely questions about them before they went on that 2 mega season run. But it looked as though Lynch, they moved on, and then they were going to fit somebody else in, and everything was going to go swimmingly. They got into Europe, and ever since that game where they sneaked into Europe there, it's just never felt like the same Larne. And yes, they had to catch up with all these other games in the league. They did come second, but they're kind of a middling season for them. There just seem to be more questions than we've really got answers. I think since Lynch is moving on, he already was the greatest manager in Larne history, but his stock has just continually risen since. And here they were, bringing in this unknown in Nathan Rooney from the Gibraltar League, who seemed to be this new wonderkin young manager, and he's never really kicked on for a variety of reasons. Larne fans aren't having this outpouring of tears and concerns and, oh no, I thought he was really doing something well. It feels like he will be a pub question 10 years from now.
It's definitely a brief enough stint to warrant the pub quiz answer. I think when you look at the whole situation, and when the dust has settled and you look back at this whole situation, you will have to wonder, how did this all progress and how did this just go from one disaster to the next? One person I feel for a little bit is Gary Haverin. I mean, here he is now being thrust another squad on him, a squad that certainly wasn't, his squad, which is what he had to deal with last season as well. And he's now just been put in the position again where he's going to have a lot of tough questions to answer, a lot of performances he's going to have to put up, despite not being given the proper full go of it himself.
Let's get to the question that most people are wondering, and maybe by the time people are listening to this, it's become a bit more clear. But going to the statement from Larne, Larne can confirm that first team manager Nathan Rooney has left the club by mutual consent, whatever that means, with immediate effect. Following discussions between Nathan and the club, this is a decision taken in line with implementing our long-term football strategy, and what we believe gives us the best possible opportunity to succeed in the years to come, both on and off the pitch. We'd like to extend sincere thanks, etc., etc., etc. And Guy Haven is back in interim charge. Well, I guess he was in full charge for a part of last season, while an extensive process to appoint a long-term successor gets underway. No further comment from the club. So they're splitting ways. Clearly, this wasn't meant to be. It's hard to say there was anything results-wise that suggests he deserved to not be there. But clearly they were not moving together in sync. The question there is, what would in sync have been? Because when he jumped on board with this team, he thought, this is a chance for me to take the next step in my career, take a team playing these games in Europe, potentially win a few leagues with Larne, and then move on to the next phase of my career. And clearly they thought as him as someone that can come in to Larne and keep up the high standards and that professional acumen that they want. And this move suggests something has changed. But what?
It's really hard to know. I mean, I don't think it can be results based. How could it be? I sort of toyed with the idea of, were they unhappy with the European performance? And there's part of me that says, well, we talked all last season about how historic and unique Larne's position was last year. You couldn't be expecting him to replicate that and that be a deal breaker. So I don't really know. I mean, I'd say there has to be something else beyond results. So many different factors at play. We know Larne has new ownership behind the scenes there, so that there could be something at play there in terms of matching up
Well, that's the big change, isn't
strategies.
it?
It has to be. I can't see what else it would be.
That's the big change. In November 2024, Kenny Bruce is in charge, and now he isn't. And clearly in that time, whoever the hierarchy is in Larne, they now don't see Nathan Rooney as their man long term moving forward. And perhaps Nathan Rooney's thinking, you know what, I've been here for 9 months or so. Yes, it's been a bit turbulent with the whole UEFA Pro license thing. But maybe he's thinking, this isn't the project I signed up for. Why am I here when I could be somewhere else? And without any insight into where this goes, the questions that are coming to my mind is the Larne project that we know currently set to continue? Is full-time football in doubt for them long term? And really, what is the financial situation at Larne? Because there's been plenty of questions on what a post-Kenny Bruce era will look like. We all thought that potentially this team was going to go to new heights from a financial point of view with all that European money. But you have to wonder, is that European money being used elsewhere and it's now not for the future, and Larne needs to look at how it can be self-sufficient moving forward? And of course European money is going to play a part of that, but we all know what they've done previously. They've spent big money on players to come in, they've invested in wages, and not all of that was paid on the debit. It may have been paid on the credit card. And it's just going to be interesting of, was this just a clash of personalities or visions, or is this a sign that Larne is moving in a different direction, and it might be a vastly different one to what Larne fans have been used to over the past few years?
Yeah, I mean, all questions that can be asked. I think it's interesting you say have the visions of what the project is. Is there a disconnect there between what Nathan Rooney signed up for versus what the reality is on the ground at Inver Park now? I don't think we can really know that, and it'll maybe become clearer as the season goes ahead. For me, I'm already starting to think, well, what do you do in terms of a manager? I thought it was interesting they talked about a lengthy process that suggests due diligence and maybe checking that everything's up to speed, which it mightn't have been in the past. Certainly looking around the league, I don't know who your candidates could be within the local game. I think it's going to be another outside manager. I've seen a few names floating about, none that I would mention because it's nothing concrete. But would you be looking at a manager across the water again? I don't know.
I don't know if anything we've seen over the past year would make anybody at Larne think we were onto something there, try and continue on with what we're going. Like, if I was a Larne fan, I'd probably be going, we had Lynch Inc. here, who were upstarts, hardworking, knew the Irish League, and have went on and are away doing their thing in Derry. Maybe we go back to that, some sort of stability, rather than this outsider who, again, we've talked about it in this podcast before. Name me where the outsider in the Irish League has worked. Because there's been so many high profile, you may call them disasters or not going well, which we have to admit, this is going to be put into that box. Did not go well. It's how you would describe this. The European run was good. There's no doubt. Squeaking through penalties. Can we really judge on what happened last season? But you can't say, big thumbs up, somebody should try this again. So the shift might be towards, go back to what we know. We'll just have to see how that goes, right?
Which leaves the question with where, I suppose. But I mean, I don't know.
Well,
who's about?
Well, last time I can say it was strongly hinted to me that Rodney McAree was their man. They wanted him. They thought he was someone in that Lynch mould who was tactically astute, knew the league, very impressive, and maybe underrated, but also knew how to do the whole full-time setup because he had that experience at Glentoran. Many people are still looking at, and remember, whatever he's 50, 51, Roddy McAree, still young in manager's terms. People are almost thinking, well, he's away living his retired life in Dungannon. I don't think that is 100% nailed on or guaranteed. I've heard nothing to suggest that he is going to be viewed and put top of their board now. But I can foresee that being, if we're looking at the managers across the board, he would be one that wouldn't be a million miles away. Oran Kearney is a manager that is currently unemployed. It would be a big step up, and we all know what happened with Coleraine. The whole full-time thing wasn't really something he was interested in, and he never brought Coleraine to the absolute higher echelons that Larne are at. So it's hard to look throughout the league and go, there's someone there. We've mentioned the Lynch brothers a couple of times here. It hasn't gone swimmingly up in Derry. This season hasn't been what they've wanted with a whole pile of investment. But by all accounts, it's not going that bad that they're willing to scuttle back to Larne. So then you look at, is there a name in the League of Ireland who we might not be familiar with, who they could bring up? We've seen Higgins come in, Devine come in. So it is more attractive than previously. Like, if we see Damien Duff come in, wow.
I was just
don't see it.
It off the tip of my tongue.
Don't see it. But the range of outcomes is huge, is it not? I don't see Larne going for the complete unknown or the, like, in Irish League terms, like, okay, they haven't done a huge amount, but we'll see how it goes. I think they want some sort of stability. And if we are to talk about Gary Havern, who I thought was going to be a strong contender last time, just, continuity Larne, let's be fair, I don't know how much of a hand on the shoulder, guiding light, yes, I'll do whatever you say, Nathan, there was last season. But if I'm being very harsh, there's nothing that I saw last season going, he's the man.
No, but in Gary's defence, I suppose it's difficult for any manager to come in with fresh ideas and new ideas to a squad that's already been built. Which again, if this was in the pipeline, for goodness sake, sort it before the summer rather than landing yourself in this position now. So that's what makes me think that this really is a very recent thing.
Of course, because yes, you had the European games and the start of the season, but to make all those signings and to get this point now in the season, you got to think, Maybe it was get the European games over and done with, then we can have a serious conversation, and it just hasn't come through. Maybe there's a really good opportunity for Nathan Rooney, and he's saying, "Sorry, fam, but I was hoping to use this to get to here. There is already potentially open for me. All the best." How will Lauren remember this man? I think they'll remember him as maybe the David Moyes of the Lynch era.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is, and this is no disrespect to him, but based on the situation last season, what is there to remember? What games can we look at after the whole handling where you can firmly say this was Nathan Rooney's Larne or this was Gary Haveren's Larne? We don't know what the situation was there, so there's very little to go off. I was still thinking coming into this season when I was thinking about different teams, it'll be fascinating to see what a very clearly concrete Nathan Rooney's Larne will look like. And now we won't. But how can you remember something that's so well defined?
It's just so much in the shadow of the previous team of the double, back to back season winning team. We don't know if will Andy Ryan ever play for Larne again. Don't know. Bonus is away. Sean Want's gone. Bolger's away. Leroy Miller, if he ever gets up to the same level, amazing, but he might not be the same type of player. Sule's gone, so it's odd. I just going into the season, whatever happened last year, the reason I didn't have them at the absolute top of the league is you just felt that they weren't a fully conceived team. I'm not saying all the other ones are either, but there was just a lot of work to do. And if they were to be up at the top, they needed to pull it together. I think going through this whole process of another manager just says that there's a bit more work to do. There's still talent in this team. You have to admit. I'm sure you would take plenty at your boys Portadown. Plenty of other sides would happily come in. But here we are on the 18th of August. Could we see more outs than ins at Larne while other teams smell blood in the water?
It's difficult because if there is a manager already in the pipeline, how how are they going to know what they want from this squad? It takes a while to get to know players and see who you want about the place. Would it be rash to take? I mean, just for example's sake, a Benji McGee. I know that's somebody we spoke a lot about. Somebody who you're sort of like, well, is he going to get kicking on at Larne this year? Is he maybe going to be in the background again? How can he make a decision, or how can any manager make a decision about him without having that time to bed it in? And by that time, we're out of the window. So I don't really know. I sort of feel like it might be pause mode for Larne at this point and see what they can bring in. They maybe have some transfer targets they might try to bring in towards the end. I don't know, but I don't see too much movement because I feel like at that point you're getting rid of potentially players that you might regret getting rid of later on.
I think we can all look back and say Tiernan Lynch moving on was the moment that Larne changed from one era to another. And I wonder when we look back at this and the whole situation that we've had with Nathan Rooney, from his surprise appointment to the whole thing with the UEFA Pro license and all the rest. If I was a Larne fan, I'd be shaking my head going, oh, after all the outside noise, when can we go back to being the boring machine that they were only a couple of years ago? Still plenty of talent. Maybe, there's still chat that Sloan could go for a fee. There's been players that moved on that sure there's money coming in. And we've been sidetracked so much with the things that we've heard coming out of there. You just don't know what's going to happen next. Kenny's suddenly moving on. Now here comes Nathan Rooney going. It might take longer than we think for this all to come together, but they do have a squad and they will be an attractive job. There's no doubt, but it comes with that asterisk, doesn't it? Like, I'm talking there about Rodney McAree. If for some reason he thought, I do want to take my career back up through the levels again, is this a club that screams stability?
No, well, I mean, certainly, it certainly doesn't scream that. The other thing I would think about in terms of both Macquarie and Oran Kearney, who you mentioned earlier, it's going to have to take a very attractive offer, and that's going to involve some significant investment from the new owners. In the case of Kearney, we already know his feelings of full-time football and how that relates with his own career. And with Macquarie, he's in the family business here. He is home. He is loved down at Dungannon. They're thriving. We'll talk about the weekend's results soon, but they're off the back of an incredible season. Why might you jump if you're saying, well, we've been in Europe and didn't do too badly, and we've just won the Irish Cup, and certainly Dungannon will be challenging for that top six again, or be aiming to. Why would you say that to get the step up, I need to go to what is potentially a Larne on the descent?
Well, it's fair to say fans of other clubs throughout the league have looked at this news. Everybody, I think, it's hard to argue. It is hard to argue that as soon as Rooney came in, there wasn't a whole lot of people pulling for this to be a success. They were really hoping for this to be, oh, here they come into the league, trying to outsmart how it works out. So there'll be plenty of people patting themselves on the back saying, I told you this was how it was going to go. You look at the reaction from other fans, and they are very much reveling in what they see as instability. This, of course, could be the new regime stretching its muscles and saying, here we go, we make big decisions, we have a clear vision, and sometimes you just got to make room to make those big calls. And Lauren could be sitting here with Gibson Cups in the couple of seasons to come, but there was so much fog and mist to try and decipher through, it's not very clear at the minute. Of course, we talk about Larne and all their success last year being the first ever Irish League club to get into a group phase in European competition. Linfield are back where they were 2-3 years ago, where they're in a playoff, one game, two legs, so they can reach this league phase and all the bountiful money that comes with it, the prestige that comes with it. And realistically, it's what the past few years of Irish League football and the progression that we've seen, teams going full-time, it's all in preparation for this. They beat Fairway's opposition last week, and now they've got a double-header with familiar foes, Shelbourne. There is something humorous in the fact that they met a couple of weeks ago, one team progressed, one team did not, and after all that, they're back here again. I know it's a quirk of the Champions Path in Europe, but there's no doubt, and I think a lot of people are echoing this, I don't think they're favoured, but Linfield are 100% in a better position than they were at the start of the summer to play against this Shelbourne team.
Absolutely. I mean, you were talking about how Linfield are back where they were 2-3 years ago. I was going to add that they're also back where they were 2-3 weeks ago. I think that's the key thing about this fixture. And look, I kind of hate that this has been able to happen. Bring back the old format and the glamour ties and all that. But
I tell you what, yeah, I think they would far prefer playing against Shelbourne than playing against Panathinaikos. Thank you very much.
yeah, yeah. But it'll be an interesting test because there is this whole debate of, oh, well, Shelbourne are mid-season and a much better gel team that are back at it. Linfield are only just coming back into pre-season, etc., etc. We'll be able to see what that difference makes. And I think you're absolutely right. Linfield are in a stronger position than they were last time. Particularly in the second leg, I didn't think that they were too far off the pace. I think when you add in a little bit more time playing together, I mean, look at Offord last week, etc. There's a boy that has started off well. If you can get players that are finding a bit of form, that are starting to gel together a bit better, they could well be a match for Shelbourne. It's something I'll be watching.
I'm a proud little hype man looking at Offord, and realistically, he has all the skills, abilities, traits to do what he's done. This is the type of player they were buying. This is the type of player that everyone said he could be, and all the fans are saying, why are Linfield not going for a player like this who has so much upside and he's showcasing it? My goodness, does he have a weapon of a foot on him. He's got energy for days, and he looked to be the danger man against Shelbourne last time, and I mean, he is their secret weapon. There's no doubt about that. If they get through this tie, he will have done great things, but they also have to get back to their fundamentals. Defend, playing it out, keep that poise. And I was very critical of Linfield in that first game against Shelburne early on in the season down at Toka Park, because I thought that's exactly what they lacked. They were overawed by the situation. I'd be very disappointed if that's what happens again across these both ties. It's playing in the Linfield's hands because they go to Dublin first. They get out of Dodge, 1-goal, 0-0. And I think, and they proved it, to be honest, in that second leg, they can really do something against the Shelburne team. They are not the favourites, but they have a chance. There's no doubt. And I think actually there'll be disappointment in Belfast if they do not squeeze by, because ever since RFS and that whole big last minute heartbreak that it was with the OG from Ginley Gallagher, there's pressure here, I think, as well. That yes, they might be considered the underdogs here, but you go through a big long season, you spend all this money, deliver.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. I know a couple of Linfield fans who it definitely won't have sat well with them that the first team to make it into the league phase, as we call it now, was Larne and not themselves.
Absolutely,
And
because they had 9 fingers round it.
100%, and they will be feeling that pressure on themselves. So okay, we have to now match this. Larne have set the standard last season. We have to try and meet it. And look, I'm not going to go as far as to say that if an Irish league team fails to make it to the league phase, that all of a sudden this is a damning indictment on the league or anything. But certainly that is a new level to aspire to. It's being done. They know it's possible. Rise to that occasion, and that's certainly what they'll be thinking, I imagine.
Yeah, they of course would love Gibraltar, Maltese, Faroese opposition again. There is countries that would be a lot more palatable, but Shelburne is not a side that's completely, we're not talking about as Shelburne played against Croatian champs, Czech champs, any of that type of game. This Shelburne is not even close to what Larne was having to go against there last week. So we sit with bated breath, but the real disappointment will be if it's all over by the first time. Because you got to hope that there's a bit more juice, a bit more energy in Linfield after playing all these competitive games, and maybe there'll be a bit more deterioration. I know it's only been a couple of weeks, but I still think, and it's clear in the league table, Shamrock Rovers is the best team in the League of Ireland right now. It's a season-defining game, and if they miss out again, what does that say for Healy's legacy there, going close twice like this? I know for him, he'll want to nail it for his own legacy there after all the championships. It is the icing on the cake, and will probably be the final push for him. I know there's been lots of rumours about him going to Scotland, but it would just be the final push for him to get a job that is just a slam dunk. Absolutely, this is the next place where I want to go. So, bated breath, there's no doubt. It does set up the interesting conversation of, if you're a Coleraine or even a Glentoran, let's put Larne in here to be nice, is there a part of you for this season kind of want Linfield to get it because you're hoping you could do what Linfield did to Larne last year?
Yeah, it certainly puts more pressure on a squad, on a team. There's a lot more matches. You end up with these situations where there's a lot more fatigue, a lot more work has to be put in, and potentially, as we saw with Larne last season, it does damage your domestic form. Um, yeah, there's mind games there. I mean, Europe always brings up these great dilemmas. Do we support the team for the good of the league and Mr. Coefficient, or do we not want to see rivals doing well in Europe? That's the whole way up that you have to do.
Do
So
you think NI Coefficient gets a new kit every year and like cuts it in quarters and wears all four on a Wednesday night
definitely
or
should.
Thursday evening?
Yeah,
You know,
definitely
who
should.
needs the half and half scarf when you can have like, let's, please just draw, please just draw. Like, it sounds stupid, but like Larne getting that 0-0 result over on whatever island that was off Portugal, a million miles away against Santa Clara, like that actually helps.
Yeah,
I know
huge,
the tie was over, but it helps.
huge for the coefficient. And look, if I'm looking at it as a fan of the league, I'm obviously saying, yep, that's what we want. We want the coefficient up. We want better representation for Irish League teams in Europe, and we want it to become more regular that we're advancing further into the competitions. As a Portadown fan, rather than a fan of the league, I'm going, oh, and like I looked at Dungannon Swifts in Vados, which is my number one dream destination. These are things I visualize walking around, daydream about Vados. Then the Faroe Islands, somewhere that I'd love to go on a away day, and you see Linfield heading out that direction. So there's a jealousy involved, but I think obviously for the good of the league, you do sort of want to see them kick on a little bit. And for clubs, like you say, who are challenging for the title, they'll say, if we can fire more games onto their schedule, better for us.
Well, those European games did result in a couple of games this weekend not being played. Kind of takes a wee bit of the wind out of the sail as well for Ballymena and the Cruise. We've got games happening on Tuesday, which look, a majority of you, they will have already happened, but we are going to briefly skim through the games that happened on Saturday past and look ahead to what's going on for the rest of the week. There was only 4 games, and the big winners were your boys Portadown. Not many people thought they were going to go to everybody's favourite little second team up and down the league in Dungannon, going down to Stagmore Park. It is, quote-unquote, hard place to go. You got beat by Glentoran in a rather ugly game at home the weekend previous. Both teams going in with 0 points after Dungannon got beat by Linfield at Windsor Park. But you blitzkrieged them, and you got a massive 3 points. You were a delighted little boy after that game, were you not?
Yeah, look, it was fantastic. Great day of football. I take umbrage with the Dungannon, everyone's second favourite little team. Not a fan.
Well, everyone, I think, like everyone got a wee bit like good old Dungannon, and I'm sure they get annoyed about
It's
that.
patronising,
But
yeah.
maybe it's the Belfast bias, but there's 100% people going, oh, they're a great team to watch. And look, I've been saying lots of great things about them. And I was a bit surprised by, not that I saw the game in full, but I was very surprised to hear Ports 2-0 up so quickly. Because as much as they got beaten fairly convincingly against Linfield, there was nothing that I saw against Glentoran where I thought Portadown are going to take it to Dungannon. And Dungannon has had the number of the Ports over past times. Was it like 2021 was the
Yep.
last time Portadown had beat Dungannon away? So that was a big result. There's been a few horror moments for that side of that ground. So going 2-0 up after, whatever it was, 20, 30 minutes,
18.
well, must have felt good.
Yeah, oh, no, look, it was brilliant. It was a great day of football, sunshine. Stangmore, for all my criticism of the Swifts, great ground to watch football at. You're right on top of the action. You can hear every shout, every crunch, and believe me, there were crunches. You talk about the previous game at Glentoran. Personally, the performance against Glentoran didn't scare me too much. It actually reminded me of the opening game last season against Cliftonville, where we lost, but you sort of said, look, there's something there, and there are areas to improve on. If I was being overly critical, I would maybe say more clinical in front of goal. And although our first half against Glentoran, we were on the attack and it was really good in building them and just not quite finishing it. It sort of waned off a little bit as the game went. This time, the attack was there from the get go, hit them hard, high press, and we got the results from it. I mean, there were 3 chances in as many minutes at the start of the first half, which ended in the third one with Eamon Fife's goal only 6 minutes in.
I wonder from this, because reading back at some of the interview snippets from Rodney McAree, he was absolutely gutted by that first half performance. He said it was one of the worst he's seen from his team. But Niall came out after and was very clear on what his game plan was. And that was press high, get in the faces of the Dungannon backline. And it worked an absolute treat because even before the goal, watching the extended highlights from your fine boys, you were all over them. You could have been 3-0 up within 10 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. Going in 2-1 at half time probably wasn't reflective of how much of that first half we dominated. There were chances galore right across the first half. I thought we were absolutely fantastic going forward. Um, Putting that pressure down the outside. People always talk about in this league how there are no wingers. I think in Josh Ukick and James Teelan and also in other boys in the squad, the likes of Maisie and Ray Tulloch, we have wingers and we have traditional wingers who can run those channels, hug the byline, get up, get balls across, etc., etc. I think we were really, really fantastic out of the gate flying. Dominated the first half, as you say, and I know Rodney talked about how I think the word he used was unacceptable, the Dungannon performance. Second half, I thought as well, though, we were really solid. I think Macri maybe overstated or overplayed a brief period, I would say a period of about maybe 15 minutes at the start of the second half, where Dungannon, despite being down to 10 men, sort of took the took control of the game for a little bit while we resettled ourselves. He talked about that being one of his proudest moments as a manager. Personally, I don't think they were, that flying in that moment, certainly on top. But look, Port's disciplined, mature was the word that Niall used, sort of regrouped and saw the game out.
Two red cards in the game. First one was probably the more significant one. The heartbeat of that team, captain Bigorama getting sent off, straight red card, high boot on Fife. Zero complaints. I think they should have, from my perspective. I know you'll probably agree, but what's he doing there?
I understand it because I don't think he is meant anything at all. I don't even think he's meant to challenge.
What are you doing putting your boot that high in that part of the pitch?
Yeah,
there's a head would just be like it's like a magnet to a head. That it is reckless beyond belief.
it is. But I think he's been caught ball watching. I think he's jumping to try and take down that ball. He probably, I mean, knowing Biggie, that is a very likable fella, very humble. Everyone always says that. I don't think there's any malice. I just think he doesn't know the Damon's there. You can say that's a reckless lack of awareness, I suppose. But there's certainly no intention in it. But no, you can't have any arguments. I mean, despite the fact that the Dungannon social media put high foot in inverted commas and then urged people to watch the replay, and you watch the replay and it's an attempted murder. But you know, apart from that, I don't think anyone could have any arguments.
That's a tricky situation, is it not? Because you've got the other side down to 10 men, a very tricky team. There's no doubt. Fast, rapid on the ball at home. You're 2-1 up because you've got those two quick fire goals. Nice little shot from Fife, who kind of broke away very nicely, and then Ukek nipping in at the front post. Hateful goal to give away if you're a Dungannon fan. But then they come back, a penalty. I think it was the right call. Again, frustrating if you're supporting the boys in red. Just that tug from Lee Chapman, I believe. So it's 2-1 there. It's tricky because you push on, you get caught. They're going to put every man they have behind the ball, and you're going to struggle to break them down. So you're looking to push on because you need to get that third goal realistically. But it's just a very difficult pendulum to try and swing at the right moment. But you get it, and Jordan Gibson gets 2 goals, a man I quite like. Is he the answer to your striker problems? Because he's not a striker in my experience.
Well, certainly he offered something going forward. I think when you were down at Shamrock for the opening game against Glentoran, we sort of talked about how sort of comfortable he looked on the ball and how maybe there definitely is an option there. Obviously, we're recording this on Monday night. You will have seen just at the start of recording there that we announced Reece on loan from Linfield. So I think when you're looking at
a domino many people were waiting to fall. Linfield brought a couple of more boys in over the past while, kind of Scottish youth players, and in that situation, you got to think he seemed like the odd man out anyway. But the best thing for Reece would be go out and get top flight experience on a consistent level, and Portadown as the club that it's linked up with. Another ex-Curry boy coming together at Shamrock Park.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was just down there sort of doing the signing photos before we recorded. You can see that sort of link up. It was Niall that gave Reece's debut at 16 at Dundela, and obviously Reece has done nothing but kick on since then. The contract he was given at Linfield last season shows the faith they have in him and in his ability. So, look, I hope it's one of these ones where he comes in and loan. He's certainly eager to prove that he should be a starting player in this league and a top striker. Still very young, so I hope he can hit the ground running and have a real impact. If you're talking about, having more options at striker, or for me, what I look forward to with Ahu is somebody for him to play off. I think the main thing that's hampering him, and for the record, I think Ahu's brilliant, and I think he had a great season last year. But I think what maybe does play against him is that he was having to do so much work on his own, take the ball in, turn, beat your man, get your shot off, whereas his real strengths are awareness, making the runs, in behind, everything like that. So if he has somebody else to bounce off there, it should kick him on as well.
Well, it just really now sets up your season because you win 4-1 in the end. There's a second red card in the second half, second yellow. Again, I haven't seen any highlights of the first one for Alves. Second one, what are you doing diving in when you got a yellow card like that? So, you win out against 9 men, and that just sets up a team who I know will be disappointed not to get that draw against Glentoran. Maybe thought that if things fell better, you would have sneaked even 3 points against Glentoran. But to go against Dungannon and get that win, every win at this part of the season can be really vital. It puts points on the board, and it sets you up quite nicely, does it not? You've got some big games coming up. Ballymena on Tuesday, which would be a key matchup when it comes to the rest of your season. Now you've got Larne coming up at the end of the weekend, which you'll be licking your lips at to play against. So it's all like momentum is key in football, and Portadown built a majority of their season on a purple patch in and around somewhat kind of September till about December. That was where a majority of their points were had. So you'll hope a couple of goals, chest up, because when you look at teams throughout the summer and all those friendlies, Portadown were scoring a lot of goals.
Yeah, I mean, I attended every preseason game this year, which was quite glad to tick off. Yeah, some real exciting stuff going forward. I mean, you've already, I think you alluded to in a previous episode, how much praise I've been giving the like to James Taylor and Ben Wiley on the back of preseason. I think they've been fantastic. They're like two new players in so many ways, getting an actual chance to have a full preseason with the club and it not be sort of coming in and having to hit the ground running straight away. And they've been able to build that up. They've been absolutely fantastic. In terms of getting points on the board early, again, it's brilliant. When you look back and everyone talks about Portadown pre-Christmas last season, we didn't have any points on the board at this stage of the game. So it's very nice to second game weekend to get your first 3 points. Not too bad for the so-called worst
Well,
team in the
I
league. But
do. I'm glad you mentioned a couple of those players there. I like Ben Wiley. He's been somewhat of a man who's never had his chance to, or has never fully taken the opportunity to establish himself within a team, had the talent, but what position does he play? How does he connect up with the rest of the players that he's with? And having that season at Portadown, I still think there was a touch of that, but he played plenty of his time as a number 8, eventually, all time kind of as a high winger. But even in that game that I saw him playing against Glentoran, I like him because he's got the stature. He wants to pass. He can kind of nip the ball off people. He can just glide from one part of the pitch to the other. And he's like heel-esque, I think, in the way he can just pick players out and take that one step and get away from a man. He's got a lot of work to do, but I mean, he has everything that you need to be a very good creative central player. And also, I know Portland fans are frustrated with the likes of UK. I'm a big fan, and I think you can see in that game against Dungannon, his height's a big deal. I see people panicking when having to deal with him when he's going for high balls, but also he didn't have a huge opportunity there against Dungannon to find the back of the net with his feet. But he can do that, pick a pass, run at players. I like him, and I wouldn't be surprised. He's got number 9 in the back of his shirt. I can see him being a number 9 up the centre, but you've told me that's a non-goer.
okay, well, I don't know what plans there are going forward there. Josh to me is a fantastic player with every bit of ability and potential, that you can see on his best days. Um, in terms of as a traditional winger, I think because those are so sought after in the league, I think it's a great position for him. In terms of what Niall decides to go with going forward, I don't necessarily know. I'll leave that side up to him. But yeah, look, he's an exciting player to watch. You know that he has that talent and ability. He's so on the ball, the footwork, the speed, it's all rapid, and you feel like when he picks the ball up, there's at least going to be a chance here.
Well, you alluded to it there. lots of chat online pre-season, a lot of reaction to Ross Welch's prediction. I said eighth for a variety of reasons, which I've already alluded to in the talent that you have at Shamrock Park. But as a Portadown fan, and I know this already, you very much disagree with Ross Welch's assessment of them being 12th this year.
Yeah, look, predictions are always difficult. I do understand that somebody has to be predicted last place. That is the nature of doing predictions. It's not necessarily the prediction itself, although I think it's way off the mark. In my view, he's entitled to that view. I just think it's well off. For me, it was the justification after, which didn't seem to hold up to any scrutiny. He talked about the worst team in the league that has the second best home record in the league. It's a newly promoted team. It's not full time, doesn't have all the same facilities, and yet was right up there in the mix, second to Christmas, fighting for those European playoff spots right until the very end. He talked about the difference in form, and everyone talks about our great pre-Christmas form after Christmas. He talked about us being stinking this calendar year. I mean, that's a period in which we have two hard fought draws away at Inver and Solitude. In terms of when you're talking about Larne and Cliftonville, we beat them both quite convincingly at Shamrock in that period. And this is a period where we have suspensions, injuries. The likes of Alton Top and McKinnon are both missing.
Every team has injuries and suspensions. Come
and
on,
we
2025.
continued to pull off results. The likes of those Cliftonville and Larne games, with 10 men, we managed to hold Dungannon to the draw at a time when they were absolutely flying. Look, I'm 100% going to acknowledge that maybe we weren't at the same pre-Christmas levels, but that's football. You're going to have periods of up and down in a season. Yeah, I know Ross demands absolute perfection from Linfield and cries when they win the league before the split that they weren't aesthetically pleasing enough. But the reality of football is you have these ups and downs, and I think we had a stellar season last year. Absolutely brilliant.
Oh, there's no doubt compared to the expectations. Even I, who usually can sniff a team out, I hope, in the sense that I was able to kind of predict that the whole lock all, and I would even say argue last season Dungannon's kind of surge. Like I get it. It's amazing the reaction that got. But you've got that one win, and I know for you as a fan, because you've talked about this, you've spent more time worrying about being relegated or busting a gut to get promoted into the top flight than you have had the serenity of 8th, if you can call it that.
Yeah, no, look, 100%. That has to be your goal. When you're a newly promoted team, and look, I know, look, we can talk about history and it's all on the walls and league titles that people be very jealous of and whatnot. You can talk about history and how big the club is, but you have to deal with your current circumstances. And Portadown's goal in the current era is to be a permanent fixture in the Premiership, and that means establishing yourself, continuing to stay safe, gradually building that squad. And that's what we're here to do. And I think we have the ability to do that. Ross talked about a poor squad and a poor manager. Doesn't line up at all. If you work your way up the pitch, Aaron McCary, strong candidate for one of the best goalkeepers in the league last season. I would say you would struggle to find a better back four than our starting back four in this league. I think they're absolutely fantastic, and plenty of youth there as well, which means that there's potentially more to come from them. In the midfield, we've already talked about the quality of the likes of Wiley. You're a big fan of young Robbie, I know. Gary Thompson still putting boys to shame left, right, and centre with his work rate. And quality up top, which we've talked about in terms of Keelan, Mays, Yukik, the likes of Fife, who was absolutely fantastic on Saturday. One of the best Eamon Fife performances I've seen in my time watching him, and a who well worth his salt too. And what I'll also say on top of the squad, when you look at the criticisms of the manager, I don't think they hold up to scrutiny at all. I think there's a reason that Niall was in the conversation for most of the season last season as a potential manager of the year. Comes in on the back of one of the worst Portadown seasons in living memory, and nearly pulls off the Great Escape, wins us promotion from the Championship, which is a difficult task. It's a hard league, which I know you know. Really, really tough opposition there. Gets us up, builds the squad, defies all the naysayers the first season, including Ross the first time round. You know, it was so nice we had to do it twice. And he will do the same again this season, I'm confident. I mean, he's got high praise from all around the league for the job he's doing. I'm more than satisfied. And I think that there's a vision there. Build this squad, create us as a permanent fixture in the league, like he did with the likes of Carrick. And I just don't think any of those criticisms really hold up.
What would you say is the minimum expectation then at Portadown?
Minimum expectation. I mean, there's a party line and there's a personal line. You know, not that I'm being instructed that this is the only thing, but I think any right thinking fan knows that for our long term aspirations, the party line has to be that we just want to be a permanent fixture in this league. We want to be safe and we want to be comfortably safe. We don't want to be dealing with playoffs. We don't want to be floating around that relegation spot. I would certainly like us to be, you know, in and around bare minimum ninth. I would be really happy if we can try and replicate. I'm not saying that we'll be up at the same heights because so many teams have invested. So many teams that were in our vicinity last season, like Coleraine were in our vicinity last season. I don't see that happening this year with the investment. Ballymena have invested heavily, etc., etc. I would like, you know, I'd be really happy with like an eighth, seventh if we can push. And obviously, you want to try get into those European places. But comfortably safe is the goal for me at the end of the day.
And that's me. I bring that up. You know, our Portadown fans going to get frustrated if you're sitting there 10th for a majority of the season, do you think? Or is that still better than what it's been in previous years?
They might get frustrated, and that's the nature of football fans. At the end of the day, I would say keep an eye on the long term goal. Our goal is to become a permanent fixture in this league. The more that we stay in this league, the more we can develop as a club. We'll be looking at the likes of the stadium funding and all coming out, which you know we haven't really touched on, but we'll be keeping an eye on all that. But like that's the goal, is to continue to perform at this level, that we're not in a situation where we're having to go down again and that sort of thing. So I would say eyes on the prize.
I don't think you could judge Dungannon based on their result against Linfield last week. And it could all change based on how they play on Tuesday, right? But was there anything that you saw from Dungannon that made you think, you know what, maybe this team isn't for the same levels that we saw last year? I know McGovern being gone is the key thing, and you know, if Dungannon are, let's say, sounds weird to say it's languishing in the bottom half for a majority of this season, people will go John McGovern, John McGovern, John McGovern, like it's all those strikers that left Cliftonville last year. But was there anything that maybe made you think, you know what, maybe Niall's cracked something here, other teams maybe have cracked something here, where if you do go high against that back line, which I think is probably the weakest point in the squad, there's something to be had here? I know it's only 2 games, but
Yeah, I mean it is only 2 games, and I think you would be a fool to write Dungannon off based on the back of two results, one against Linfield at Windsor, and another where, as you say, they maybe weren't at their best and weren't the most gelled. I don't think you write Dungannon off. That said, there is potentially something to it having been sussed. Me and Niall chatted after the game last last weekend. He was very clear that he had the game plan to go in. He wanted that high press. He wanted, you know, we talk about an all last season, and I did very much the same. Everybody praised Dungannon's ball playing ability. They're a great team to watch, isn't it? Brilliant. They play the ball on the ground and quick pass and all that. The natural remedy to that is don't give them the opportunity to do it. So whether people have sussed that, I don't know. Rodney sort of alluded to in his post-match interview that he maybe will relook at shape and relook at strategy and stuff like that. At this stage of the season, we can only wait and see. Certainly, I know that that Niall had that game plan going in, and it has played off. So other managers may want to take note.
elsewhere we saw, I think, a big game near the bottom of the league. I thought going into it, it would be significant, and I know they'll have their opportunities to reverse this result. But off the back of them having this mega comeback against Crusaders the weekend before, Carrick Rangers at home take care of business against Glenavon and now have a 6 point cushion and momentum. And, you've talked to me before about how if you don't get off to a good start, it can drag, it can drag, it can drag. And nothing's even close to being decided at all. One game week can change it all, and it's only 3 points, whatever. But you gotta admit, if you are a Carrick fan right now, you're feeling pretty good about yourself, chest pumped out. Have a go at our old boys now. And if you're Glenavon, you're thinking, we've seen this movie before, and it doesn't particularly spark joy come December, January time. Albeit that's usually when they get a couple of results and get themselves out of a bit of safety. But it's 2 games for Glenavon against 2 potentially winnable teams they would view, and it's only going to get harder from here.
Yeah, it was an interesting result. It was obviously one of the first ones that as a Portadown fan you sort of look at when you're looking around the league, particularly because they are 2 teams that we would generally be fighting it out with in the current era. Look,
Were you pulling for a draw on Saturday, were you?
well, there was part of me thinking would that have been the better thing? Certainly, what you would say is Carrick are doing business early. You've alluded to it there. Get your points on the board as early as possible. There's nearly a race to the first team to get to a magic number, and they're certainly well on their way to it. The game itself not overly exciting by all accounts. Carrick threatened often and early. Gibson's denied a really sort of great chance by Jacob Carney, who, by the way, that'll be a fantastic signing for Glenavon, let me say, as a Portadown fan who watched him. McDaid has an opportunity he has to do better with. Uh,
Oh man, I saw that and I thought, oh, what? Why is he flinging his foot at that? You want to one of the keeper pretty much.
yeah, I think Glenavon, there is inevitably the question with certain teams of where are the goals going to come from. And I think Glenavon is one of those teams. I think a lot of their signings in the summer have been on the back end of the pitch, and you might have this situation where, okay, they might end up defensively quite sound. Uh, Going forward, they may struggle. So when you have those rare opportunities, you need to be taking them better than that. Um, I think Colin Coates was given the interview after the game rather than Paddy McLaughlin, and he acknowledged as much that they were lacking in that final third. They've maybe one clear cut chance after that, which is Michael O'Connor, which is cleared. Um, but it seemed to be well in Carrick's control, and it's that one goal that separates them from Gibson.
Here's what I'd say to not get too hyped up about Carrick. Good results, big time kind of out of the blue result against Crusaders. I did back them. I got that result nailed on against Glenavon. Is that the big worry is that all of these older heads with their lack of ACLs, you would think actually they would be pretty sharp in August, September. It's when players start falling apart, suspensions inevitably come in. Maybe actually they do need to get these points on the board early. And look, they're buzzing. I thought Gibson was a bit of a missing man in early parts of last season, particularly at the end of King's tenure, and him scoring goals early. It's vital to a team like Carrick.
When you have a team that has a certain profile of players, shall we say, you're always going to be wary of how long can this last. The classic saying is make hay while the sun shines. So while you have those boys at their best, get those points on the board, and that's what they're doing. I don't know how much to make of the age profile of the Carrick Rangers squad. Certainly, you might worry about fitness, etc., but you have the experience side of it. I mean, that game um, against Glenavon at the weekend, that goal went in the 37th minute. They had to manage that game, and by all accounts, did so in a very classic Baxter-esque experience style, a bit of dark arts, very much game management. So that's going to benefit them throughout the season. It may pull draws out of losses, and it may pull wins out of draws and whatnot. And they'll certainly be relying on that experience because potentially they may not be able to rely on the fitness.
Glenavon have, as much as you would probably say they're on the lookout for a striker, they still do have bodies in that position. They still have McDaid, who started there. O'Connor came off the bench there. McGovern got a start last week. I know he's a young striker for them. Lombardo, who has experience in the League of Ireland. He's there. So you'd almost look at that's your four. But it still doesn't scream, yeah, they haven't had a huge amount of time to kind of link up with all these new players like Lowe and Mallon. But a slow start for them, and the fixtures are only going to get harder, could just signal a tougher season. And as you know, when that game against a team that's around you has all this pressure and all this stress, oftentimes you're not playing your best football, and it gives other teams a freedom that will just punish you. And that's what I worry the games could eventually turn up for Glenavon, where if they don't start getting points on the board and they go without a win over the next 2 or 3 more games, getting that first win, that monkey off the back while other teams are chipping away at points, it just really puts you behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, well, Glenavon had to go into that game targeting maximum points. I mean, if you talk about potential tough runs coming up, Glenavon's future has in store for them Glentoran, Coleraine, Cliftonville, and Gannon Swifts, Larne, Linfield. Where are your points coming from in those games? I'm not so sure. And when you talk about forwards, I think the younger McGovern is a talent. I've seen enough
Yes.
of him playing against us. This could be a big season for him. Cometh the hour, cometh the man, or whatever. He could have an opportunity to really show himself this season. Not that it would put that pressure on him, certainly not. But he's one to watch, certainly. But I think this will be a team that maybe struggles to score goals. I know Glenavon were without a few players. I know Peter Campbell, for example, wasn't playing on Saturday and whatnot. But certainly you'd want to see more from them going forward in the future.
A game which I thought was 100% going to be the first one I talked about before the weekend was Coleraine against Cliftonville. No doubt a better result for Cliftonville, getting this to be a 0-0. And a slight little chink in the armour for Coleraine, where you think, these are the type of games that just whittle away at your points total, that you're patting yourself in the back saying, oh, it came close here or there. And yes, they had their chances, so did the Reds on occasion, but maybe it'll just take a bit more fermenting for this team to really tear teams apart in the way I believe they eventually will. But this is a positive point for Cliftonville after that very poor loss to Bangor. They do it at home. There's the odd referee call here or there. But I think Linfield will look at that and go, not easy, is it, boys?
Yeah, it was certainly one. There are so many unknowns in this league at the moment at this early stage. You don't know fully how teams are coming together. I think Coleraine is the one that everybody is so keen to see how they get on, and we want to get a better idea of what this team is going to produce week in, week out. I don't think this game really showed it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait even further to find out what is going on with this Coleraine new sort of resurgence, and will they be league contenders? Will it take more time than that? That said, Coleraine seem to have the monopoly of the chances. Higgins talked about that they control large parts of the game, and basically said that they didn't capitalise on that control. Nice saying, one for the cliche book, not that it is, but it will be now, that you don't win matches between both boxes, which I thought was interesting.
I think you do, but fair, but yes,
Yeah.
sounds nice.
What I mean is you have to get something at the end of it, which they didn't do. Cooper, I think, from what I saw, certainly looked to be at the heart of a lot of the attacks. Although Cliftonville seemed to have went for the stick park on Pirlo job, and had Harry Wilson basically in the shorts with Cooper for the entire game, and he, by all accounts, did a fairly good job of keeping him a bit quieter. I don't think you learn too much from this game. I don't think you can overread into either team's performance. One thing we've talked about with Cliftonville perhaps is that they're potentially still in that position they were in last season, where players have been lost. They haven't yet been replaced, and in fact more players have now gone.
Oh, it's deja vu all over again. It's it really is. And look, there's no point speculating because that's all it is, but all this noise about the Canadian takeover potentially hitting the rocks or hitting a bump in the road does not help.
No, certainly not. Um, you sort of, I mean, Cliftonville had a couple of chances. There's a really good counter attack by McWoods, which ends up, I think, with Ryan Curran that doesn't really amount to anything. A few chances, certainly, but you wonder, is this going to be the heel show again, where that man is busting his gut, doing every job on the pitch from byline to byline, and really crying out for some assistance around him? It could certainly be the case. They're another team I would worry about potentially in terms of everyone expected when we talked about this Toronto money coming in. Oh, here's a team that's going to get right back in the mix. Could they end up in a similar position that they were in last season? Very possibly.
What do you make about the penalty call? The feeling is that is it Joe Gormley who's dragged down? I don't know. I think the ball was well away. It's a fight for the ball. I I I think it would be harsh.
Yeah, I think it would have been a harsh call. I don't think there's too much in it. It ends up being a really good clearance by Jarvis at the end of it. Put it this way, from the camera angle that I've been able to see, there's not enough to actually make a decision. Jim Mitchelton certainly feels that it maybe, I think he said it would have been a brave call, but that it should have been a penalty. I don't think you can ask for those necessarily.
That says I'd be ripping if that was against me, but I'm ripping that it didn't go for me.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think you can ask for those necessarily. Ultimately, if that's what you're holding on to as, your margin for winning and drawing games, you probably have bigger problems to worry about.
Yeah, I think ultimately Corin maybe got a bit of a reality check of what this season's going to be like, in the sense that teams are going to really strategize against them, and they're already seen as a bit of a scalp now, a team that you have to properly prepare against, as you suggested, putting players on Cooper, and people know about all the ability that they have. And I'm not saying they've haven't had to deal with counter strategies before, but this deep back line thing is going to be a regular thing for them, and how they break it down. I think they've got the tools to do that. Just didn't showcase it on Saturday, and yeah, I think it's a big point. Big point at home for Cliftonville. The fixtures don't exactly lighten up. Depends how you view Larne at home, but it's a strong point, and no doubt will be looked upon that for the rest of the season. Final game of the Saturday is Glentoran quietly going about their business, 1-0 win against Bangor. Not the biggest surprise in the world, but I think if we were going to see a difference in Glentoran, well, first off, their home form had to change. Scoring goals at home, that was something they would need to do. And it didn't particularly come easy against Bangor, but there's two games where they didn't play particularly brilliant. They're still without all their full facets, but they're sitting there top of the league, or around the top of the league, with 6 points. Sometimes in the league campaign, it's about chipping away, and that's what they've done. They usually are slow starters, so as long as you're getting the points, they can set themselves up as a nice little platform to have a successful season.
Okay, it would be quite strange for me to come in and be overly critical of Glentoran when they have took away, 6 points from six available points. But it's there's definitely enough there that if I were a Glentoran fan, God forbid, that you might start to get a couple of beads of sweat running down. Now, obviously, they are without sort of key elements. I think Patrick Hoban is the one that everyone sort of springs onto their tongue. I believe the situation on him is that he could potentially play, but I think Devine's words were, "Why risk it? Why risk it when we have options? We'd rather get him back fully fit, not jeopardize any further injuries, etc." It's probably the smart move. Um, this is not a team that's at the races yet. I thought last week it didn't
No.
impress me much, and I thought this isn't a Glentoran at full flow. It's why I left last week going, we really should have got a point from that. There was an opportunity there, and I think they showed that again. I mean, the goal is rough. It's rough. It comes off the back of a bit of head tennis between the Bangor defenders. Is it Neil and Owens? Maybe I'm not too sure, but
But the Glens had their chances as well, and maybe a more chance that looked as though they had compared to Shamrock Park last week. And I mean, he gets in so many great positions, but Jenkins still just needs to tweak that bit. I mean, I know he often had that rep for he'll miss four before he scores the fifth chance. He is getting in the positions. He's causing trouble. But it could have all fell foul on Saturday if it wasn't for Cooney being alert. And it looks as though Cooney is exactly what Glenn's thought and hoped he would be. He's Amos on the other side.
Not a bad thing to have at all. Probably a bit early to call it that, but yeah, look, I wouldn't be too harsh on Jordan Jenkins over that. I know, you maybe say you have to do better there as a centre forward. He rattles the underside of the bar.
But Glenn's fans have seen this movie
Yeah, but
before.
Glenn's fans have seen
And
every
they're
movie
thinking, we
before.
love you, JJ. You're doing great stuff here. But I mean, for them to really be top three, sniffing at the trails of Coleraine and Linfield, you might only get one of those chances where it ricochets off the bar, for Jenkins. So for him, I don't think he's ever yet. I think his output is there, but I don't know if other teams would be dying to get Jenkins in their side. But I see so much from his acceleration, his shot power, his ability to beat players one on one that you think, what's the missing element? And it's just being that slightly one bit more better in execution, and we have a Jay Donnelly style 20 goals plus season, I think.
Yeah, look, maybe there's some refinement, but I mean, it could happen to Bishop hitting the underside of the bar, like and coming out. He's just been unlucky there. I think Glenn's fans are often insatiable. They cannot wait to get on the back of a striker or on the back of a player for little inconsistencies or poor performances. I think JJ has ability in spades. I know I sort of felt that when he was at Shamrock Park. It came back to bite us eventually. But look, I think he has a lot there, and a little bit of time, a little bit of development, a little bit of improvement maybe, and you have a top striker.
Before we slightly look ahead to all of these Tuesday and Saturday games, you had a very strong thought, and it came in the form of a voice note about something when it comes to the Irish League. And it obviously was sparked off by doing what I do every week, and that is reflecting upon all these games, watching the highlights. You've got your pages in front of you, and you said to me something that, let's be fair, is hardly a new or original idea. But Keelan Leeper, you have the floor.
Sensationalism there. No, it's absolutely nothing new. It's not a new idea. I don't have those, but basically, I would just love, and I think the league is crying out for a proper highlights show. I'm not necessarily talking about a TV slot. This can be on the socials, but just something that collates the entire weekend together, an extended highlight. So I'm not talking about just your goals and your cards. I'm talking about an actual decent chunk of highlights of the match, 6 minutes or so, like most clubs produce anyway. Collate them, get somebody to do a bit of commentary over them, and there you have your Niffle weekend, Jared Lawler's wild bonanza, big weekends of football, summarized each week that people can look back. I think it'd be fantastic.
Is this not a slightly old-fashioned idea?
Well, what's the better idea that's replaced it in your view?
But are we not in a position where you're having the goals pumped on the social media almost instantly? You have highlights not only from the main broadcast of the BBC, but you're also having clubs putting out these extensive highlights that often you can dip and dive through, like the time and the effort. Like for if you were there in Niffle headquarters, is putting together a 20-30 minute highlight package show with commentary and stuff like that. Is that the thing you think fans are crying out for? And maybe am I just being ignorant because I'm someone that goes across different games, see lots of different teams. Cause take your club for example, Portadown. I was able to have a nice extensive highlights package there, and Portadown the club can benefit from that by tagging a wee business at the front of it and all the rest. Is that where NIF will have a fine amount of resources? Is putting time and effort into that? Is that going to draw an audience in? Do you think?
I think I think there's an argument for it. Look, this, by the way, is no criticism of Niffle or the BBC. I think that in particular Niffle, I think have been absolutely fantastic on social media and are one of the main driving forces the likes of David Kerr, etc., and what they put out is one of the main driving forces for why the league has grown so much. Is that visibility on social media? I just think it would be nice as somebody who is a one team attender. I watch Portadown every weekend. I'm not like two unnamed individuals who can find themselves at any hole in the hedge any given weekend. Um, like around the grounds, going to different teams. As much as I'd love to take in more football, I'm at Portadown every week, whether it's home or away. And therefore, you kind of cry out for looking to see these other teams in more extensive fashion. You're absolutely right about club output, by the way. I think most teams have an extensive highlights package and post-match interviews and stuff, which are fantastic. I just think it would be nice collated. And if you want to talk about eyes in the league, I think something that you could look forward to, be it a Monday evening or whatever. By the way, if there's a TV slot, go for it. I just don't think it's necessarily ever going to happen. But certainly online, a nice match of the day style. Here's the weekend roundup. I'm not even talking about post match analysis. Just here's all your highlights collated. You get the clubs involved in that if you want. I think it'd be fantastic. But yeah, I 100% would get what you're saying about resources and stuff like that. There may be other things to fire it into.
And look, I'm not saying I'm totally against it. Like, look, you've got a boy here who spends plenty of time talking about every single game in the Irish League. So if you want to stick a camera in front of me and fire me some dollar bills, let's chat, boys and girls, right? But one thing I do think about the league that I think is probably in their, let's say, expanded hopes and dreams. When we look at our neighbours in the League of Ireland, the one thing that many fans I think will look enviously at is LOI TV, where they have streamed games and you have that whole streaming package. And there's clearly a bigger fan base there across many different teams that supports that. And look, I don't know what their books look like. I don't know how viable that would be at an Irish League level. But particularly in the top flight, you got to think something like that is where we're eventually headed. Some sort of streaming on demand type service where if either you can't go to a game or you see it afterwards or whatever, like the idea that wherever you may be, you can flick on the game on the streamer and you'll have, and it might be you doing the Portland games, and it might be Matthew Brown, for example, doing the Glentoran games. There's a wee bit of bias, as there is for League of Ireland TV, but there's something where you're paying your, let's say it's 20 quid a month, maybe more, and you can watch the entirety of Carrick Rangers against Glenavon to your heart's content. The question is there a big enough fan base for that? We don't know. Will the people willing to pay for that? We don't know. And more importantly, has the Irish League come round to the overall feeling that it can also be a television product rather than a live product? Because you still hear managers talking about how sometimes TV games is taking away from their own home gate, which I don't subscribe to as a theory, but it's out there.
I don't think it has a massive impact on gates or anything like that. I don't think there's a huge negative there. I know we did a lot of streaming, obviously started over COVID and stuff like that, and has scaled back a little bit with various restrictions and whatnot. There are plenty of people who would be in the market for a product like that. I think of elderly supporters. I think of supporters who live abroad in particular. We have supporters all over the world because we're massive. But there are plenty of people who'd be
Stu Will would pay about £300 for that.
Oh, he'd keep the whole thing afloat by himself. Absolutely. Get him running the show actually live from New York or wherever it is. I think there'd be a huge market there if you can make it worthwhile to clubs. I think it's the key thing. A lot of clubs, we don't all have lovely full-time media teams, etc., that can just produce this stuff. It has to be made worthwhile, and clubs will have to get their fair share and whatnot. But yeah, no, I think look. Do I think it's the highest priority? Probably not. Do I think it's immediately around the corner? No, but it's certainly something to look at for the future, because for me, one of the things that NIFL needs, one of the things that NIFL can sort of focus on and the league needs to grow is this sense that we are a proper football league. I think there are still people in this country, and like I've always said, I'll challenge these people every time, but you just don't see the Irish League as in the same sport or in the same vein as the big leagues, so to speak. It's like, no, well, actually, everyone in England supports their local team, etc., with the exception of a few Man United fans and whatnot. But um, why not support your local team here? And I think if we can show them that we're a professional product, which Nifl is doing fantastically, by the way, again, they are professionalizing the league in terms of how it looks and their social media output and stuff. This would be another step in that direction, which I think can only be good.
Just looking ahead to the week of football that we do have, as we said, it'll either be, it's just a chance you're listening to this on the way home from one of these games. Bangor Cruise, a Clandy Cliftonville Larne on TV at Solitude, Coleraine hosts the Swifts, Glentoran Glenavon at the Oval, and then you will be having a wee hook at Ballymena at Shamrock Park. I mean, just to speed through how these all look, I mean, Bangor Cruise, I think that's maybe a draw or a chance for Crusaders. Like, if Bangor have a poor showing there, you just wonder, is this the start of the creek? Because you just have all those nippy boys at the Cruise. So I can see that being a 1-1 or maybe Cruise taking that 2-0. Cliftonville Larne, who knows? I think neither team will be satisfied with any sort of result that isn't a win there. I think both teams will fancy that, but also you can just see that being a 1-1. Coleraine could really heap the misery onto the Swifts, or we could see a bounce back. I just think Tuesday night going up to Coleraine, that's a tough outing for Dungannon, and I think Coleraine could maybe win that 3-0. Glentoran Glenavon, I could see a sneaky draw, but the fact that it's at the Oval, I'm going to back the Glens to sneak it again for the third time in a row. And I'll let you suggest how Portadown Ballymena could go. I do actually think Ballymena not playing could maybe put them off their rocker ever so slightly, and I could see that being a real fireworks game. Maybe 2-1 Portadown, but I think it could really go either way.
Yeah, but I largely agree across the board there with the other results, just for the record. But yeah, in terms of Portadown Ballymena, look, we're coming off the back of a really, really nice confidence boost and a nice lift with that win on Saturday. Ballymena are a team who all last season I always posed the question, which Ballymena are we going to see today? Is it going to be the running riot Ballymena, or is it going to be the total capitulation Ballymena? I don't think any of those questions have been answered yet. We haven't seen enough to know what we're facing. What we do know is that they've recruited heavily, they've invested, and they'll be up for this. So it'll be a lively one.
I'm lively indeed. I'm predicting a red card in that, weirdly. But we'll stick a pin in that, and we'll try to predict the games beyond that based on nothing. You've got Larne Ports at Inver Park. You had Larne's number last year, and I'm sure a part of you slightly disappointed that Nathan Rooney isn't going to be there, because you very much got some big points against them. That also adds in a bit of pressure that you're going to try and recreate that. You go to Inver Park, one of these Friday night games. Larne will, of course, have played a game there previously as well against Cliftonville. All what's going on there. I think this is maybe a 1-1, but this could be I think this is a very open game. I think you're a bad matchup for Larne.
Yeah, I think anything can happen there. You've talked about sort of the form we had against them last season, and I think we did have their number a bit. I think the night they came down to Shamrock in particular, when we turned them over, just immediately after that Andy Ryan red card, which was then, you know, whatever. But I I think anything can happen there. I wouldn't read too heavily into what's going on this evening and what will continue to go on through the week. At the end of the day, that is still a squad with a lot of top quality players. It's not as if Gary is a complete outsider who's never met the fellas before. They'll certainly put a game up for us in a tough venue to go to. But yeah, no, I back us. I back us to get a result there. Certainly we'll be searching for a result there, and I think we can do it. I am going to go for 2-1 Ports.
There you go. A little bit of optimism along the way. Ballymena Bangor. That's a fun game up at the showgrounds, because if Ballymena are coming off the back of maybe sneaking a win against Portadown, whatever way that goes, I think they will really take Bangor to task there. May huff and puff like the Glens did. I like Ballymena a lot there. I'm going to go for 2-0.
I think Bangor could be a team that make me sweat this season. I think a lot of people have written them off very early. I would say that, I would fancy them against a lot of teams. I think they've shown some quality and there will be upsets this season. That said, I don't think the showgrounds is necessarily the place where that happens. I think you're going
No.
to see 1 or 2-0. I'll go 2-0 Ballymena to beat Bangor.
There we go. We could be sitting there with big green for both them if that comes off. I mean, I think Bangor could sneak it, early goal in the first half, hunker down. I can also see a 0-0 there. But, I think people are maybe just sleeping ever so slightly. We've only had that one game on maybe just what influence. I think we could see Ben Kennedy return to a bit of form again this year. Let's just see. Cruise Glentoran, a big test for the Glens there. Strangely, I don't know why I've totally flip-flopped on the Cruise after me predicting them finished ninth. But I don't know. You know what? I'm going to be boring. I'm going to say 1-1 there because I think those nippy boys will get in behind the Glens and get a goal somewhere. However, Jordan Stewart looks to have started off pretty well. And Glentoran, count out and Shield in tow from last year. They can get a result at Seaview, can't they?
They can absolutely get a result at Seaview. I think the Tuesday night game will be quite revealing for Crusaders to see how they fare against Bangor.
Hugely.
So
Because
we
it
will
was
not
it was
really know.
Jekyll and Hyde against Carrick. So, what Crusaders team will we see back at their home patch? Don't know.
Yeah, so we need to see what Crusaders we're dealing with. That said, Glentoran, I would absolutely fancy them down at Seaview. This could be the game if Hoban is as close as Devine sort of alluded to in his interview. This could be the game we see Hoban making his competitive Irish League debut. Potentially, I don't know. Certainly, I fancy the Glens to have got clicking a little bit more. I would say they will be looking at. I'm going to go 2-0 Glentoran. I just don't know necessarily where the Crusaders' goal is coming from in that instance.
I get you. I get you. Swifts host Carrick Rangers. I'm just going to be bold from the outset. We could be looking silly after them beating Coleraine out of nowhere, but I'm not saying I expect a massive slump. I just think that Carrick's tails are up and they've proved that they have a little bit of attacking spark. They're not a million miles away in how they're set up in the fact that they could repeat that Portadown situation. Obviously, Dungannon are going to have to go into that Korean game without Alves or Bigorama. Is Bigorama going to have a multi-game suspension just with a straight red card? I don't know. I'm going to say 2-1 Carrick, and we're all going to be sitting there going, what?
Yeah, no, I can't back you on that. I just can't follow you down that road. I think Dungannon are going to have a very tough game here tomorrow night, tonight if you're listening, I suppose. Tuesday, that's going to be a tough game up at the showgrounds. I don't think I'm not going to read too heavily, put it this way, into our result against Dungannon and write them off for the season. I think bringing Carrick down, that's one where they can show and regroup themselves and say, no, here's an opportunity, particularly maybe with the, is it fair to say, lack of legs in the Carrick team? I don't know. I'm gonna say it anyway.
Lack of
Um,
knees.
Lacking an ace, yeah. That Dungannon will be able to take it to them and play their game, play Rodney's game, and I think you're looking at maybe a 1-0 Swifts. You could go as high as 2-3, but I'm going to go conservative and go 1-0 because we've already done some high scorers.
Confident. Glenavon hosts Coleraine. We don't know what kind of situation either of those teams will be. Maybe this seems like I'm completely reversing on where I was, but I'm going to go 1-1 here. I think Coleraine might find it difficult, and I think Glenavon maybe just burst that bubble scoring wise.
Um, Glenavon Coleraine, I don't share that view. I don't know what would lead you to that conclusion at this stage necessarily. I think Coleraine are clear favourites from this. I think even when you take
Oh,
that
I think they're favourites, but I don't know. I just think that Saturday games influenced me a lot, and I mean, Glenavon could be sitting there 4 games, 0 points. Is that what you're suggesting? Maybe.
but I now don't want to suggest it because it will then not
Well, you can't.
happen.
No, I'm sure many Portland fans were like, "Go on, go on."
Look, I'm not even sticking the boot in here. Coleraine are top side. I just don't see where Glenavon are going to pull it off against them. I think even though they've strengthened at the back, there is so much. I mean, before you even start looking at, Mr. Joel Cooper and whatnot, Jimmy Glacken, baller, they have so much going forward there. I think you're looking Coleraine to be, I'm going to go 3-1 and say Glenavon maybe do burst that little goal scoring bubble, but I'm going to say Coleraine 3-1.
3-1. And we've got a weekend of football. Ring the alarm. Linfield to host Cliftonville in between this massive week against Shelburne, 2 ways. What kind of side do Linfield put out here at home? I think they'll easily beat Cliftonville. I really do. I think it might be a squeaky, just 1-0 batten down the hatches, but I just worry about where Cliftonville are going to score their goals. That's a big loss potentially. It did not sound good about Reece Campbell there going off against Coleraine. If that's multi-weeks, could even be beyond that. Just the way he came off sounds, if it's in that certain area, potentially around that kneecap area, oh dear, he did not sound like he was in a good way against Coleraine. Yeah, 1-0 Blues. Do you feel strongly either way? This is just a difficult setup, because even if there's a lot of the quote-unquote B team players, I mean non-nailed on starters like McKee or players like that, Allen maybe starting, I think they'll have enough to beat Cliftonville.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of rest in that Linfield team. That said, they're going to want some minutes on there for the likes of Fitzy and Offord and whatnot. I think that's going to be enough. I think 1-0 is probably fair. They could get the one goal up and then send the kids on, see how they get on. We're resting our boys here.
Yeah, and also there's a wee bit of less pressure because that draw Cliftonville had against them. I know it was at Solitude and this is a home game for Linfield, but they can go into that going, don't lose it and showcase we have the great quality of our squad, because even the players that are on the bench for Linfield, they're great. Still, I'm fit into a lot of other teams, so maybe it's a chance for them to prove we're the boys.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the record,
like, I'd be surprised to see Offord and Fitzy start.
It would be weird if they both started, but I think maybe it's Offord you start. I don't know. It makes no difference really, but one of them will get minutes just to sort of keep them fresh. Linfield are my title pick for the record. So, yeah, I just don't see them necessarily dropping a point even with the rest in there.
Fair enough. Keelan, it has been great to have you on. I'm sure it's great to have you on for what is a positive week early. For your Portadown boys, you've got a couple of big games that could be escalated even further off the back of games against, Ballymena and Larne, or maybe, fall back down to earth. Such is the follies of the Irish League, but we're back. It's kind of nice. It's summertimey. How can people find things that you do out there? I heard you chatting to Niall after the game. Are you jumping in? Are you renaming yourself as Johnny every once in a while so you can have a wee natter to you?
I know Johnny was otherwise occupied on Saturday, so I had the joy of trying to keep up with doing the Twitter updates and the post-match interview, which I'd rather avoid, to be honest, because I get very stressed about it. But no, look, no need to find me anywhere. I've nothing interesting to offer. What I would say is follow all the We Are Ports TV, YouTube, and all Portadown social media, and you'll get all our club updates there. From my end anyway.
Exciting. I look forward to spending random afternoons when I can get down, or we link up and find the right game. Keelan, that you are, I think, are you the latest addition to the roster? But you're a welcome one. You don't feel like a new signing. You are a new signing. And until next time, chat to you soon.
Ciao.
Big chats as always this week, but I'll not hold you back any longer, because if you're here, you should know that now is a good time to make sure you're all followed up on everything Kicking Match. We're talking Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, as well as TikTok, and as because it's this weird off-the-cuff collection of words that no one sensible really thought, let's make a brand around that. I've got Kicking Match on all those things, so search for Kicking and Match, stick it together, you'll find me, you'll find the little shamrock, the red diamond, all those good things, and you can follow me, disagree with me, shout at me, or tell me that, I'm not a bad bloke after all. I'll see you next week, next Tuesday, all going well, thanks for listening, Hope you have a good time. Tally ho!